Okay, thank you so much for joining Click Niger today for another edition of Youth Assembly as we look at the renewed call for restructuring of the Nigerian Federation. And we ask the question, are Nigerian states ready? Now, this calls for restructuring of the Nigerian Federation have continued to grow over the years. For many proponents, giving more powers to states to control their affairs and resources is what Nigeria needs to overcome its developmental challenges. However, others have argued that the most are not economically viable to shoulder the additional responsibilities that would come with restructuring. So, is Nigeria ripe for restructuring? Is one question we intend to answer today on the Youth Assembly as we look at the renewed calls for restructuring of the Nigerian Federation. Are states ready? I'm not doing this alone. And by the way, my name is Sylvia Ishegbe. Good to be here again today, this Tuesday. Our guest today is Abdulrahman Hamisu. He's a public affairs analyst and a trained political scientist. We also have Dr. Adeja Sunday. Dr. Adeja is a lecturer and political analyst, Dr. Adeja Sunday. Welcome, Dr. Adeja. I also have joining via live online, Moshood Isa, who is a communication officer at Yaga Africa. Welcome, Mr. Moshood.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so I start with you, Mr. Moshood. People have different ideas about what restructuring is all about. Some believe it's the devolution of powers, so others believe it's resource control, regionalism, or even self-determination. Why do you think proponents of restructuring have not been able to come up with a consensus of what restructuring really is?
So I think basically restructuring is a whole lot of concepts. It's a very, very wide concept, and that is why there has been no major consensus definition of what people think restructuring is. And probably because it's easier said than done, really. Because if you look at restructuring, it could be devolution of power, like you said, and it could be autonomy of the region. But funny enough, it could also be geographic restructuring. Are you creating boundaries within this region too? It could also be security restructuring. Are you allowing those people in that region to manage their security alone? So it's a holistic concept that is very, very, very wide. And I think that is why people have not necessarily have a real consensus definition of what they think restructuring is. But again, it could also mean even within the country, without having devolution of power, without having state autonomies, so to say. It could also mean restructuring our institutions within the country, making those institutions work effectively to enable people harness a dividend of democracy. So it's a very, very wide concept. It could be geographic in nature, it could be economic in nature, it could be political administration in nature. It could also mean security. But let's even start from just within the states. If you are talking about restructuring, are you even granting, let's say, there's this agitation for local government autonomy. Let's even start from there, for example. States alone are struggling or finding it difficult to grant their local government autonomy because of probably hunger for power and all that. So when we accuse the center of harnessing too much power or having too much power, we should also go down to the state and ask these questions. We see for local government elections, we see how state governors just handpick administrators to manage each local government without those local governments having that autonomy. And this is what we've been clamoring for. I think when we even start from that, granting autonomy to the lowest level of governance, which is the local government, for people to feel that impact, I think we could have a direction about if we are actually ready for this restructuring we are talking about.
Oh, so we are not even there yet. From what you're saying, we have to grant autonomy, like you said, to the lowest government before we can even ascertain whether Nigerian states are ready or not for restructuring.
Yeah, because I think first of all, apart from granting autonomy to the lowest level of governance, we have to build our institution to enable them work effectively for the people. If you're granting restructuring, you're still you're remaining with this same set of leaders and this same set of system, this set of institution, then I think is not a step in the right direction. If you're allowing this same set of people and this same set of system, and then you're not building, they said strong leaders build strong institution. But unfortunately, at the moment, we have weak institution, which is possibly as a result of weak leaders too. So if you're granting, let's say, political autonomy and economic autonomy to this set of people, regional government, and then you're allowing this same set of people using similar system to operate, then I think the aim of that restructuring itself would be defeated. I think first we should channel our energy on building our strong institution, electoral institution, anti-corruption institution, and other institution that could enable people get dividends of democracy. Let me just drop this statistics. There are only 3 states in Nigeria.
We'll get to the statistics, but let's hear from Dr. Adejo. When we get back to you, you give us the statistics. I really want to hear it. Dr. Adejo, what do you think about the call for restructuring in Nigeria so far? It's been sustained over the years. People calling from every angle, even the Niger Delta leaders have renewed the calls also for it. What is new? What is different? Why now?
I think the call for restructuring and the need for restructuring is long overdue as far as Nigeria is concerned. You know, the political class, they do not understand exactly what the people are talking about, but they know exactly what people mean when they talk about restructuring. Concept is shrouded, with conceptual ambiguities. But within the context of Nigeria, we cannot hide, away from the fact that we are due for restructuring. And so what are the factors? I think what we should be looking at is what are the factors that precipitate this quest? What are the factors that is stimulating the desire for restructuring? And to appreciate those factors, we need to situate it within the context of political economy and within the context of geopolitical arrangement of Nigeria. Why are we clamoring for restructuring? Because the country is operating a system of government in an incomplete version. It's like trying to copy and paste. When you want to copy an existing system as it's operational in a civilized society, then you should copy it correctly. The kind of federalism we practice in Nigeria is not federalism in the essence of federalism. I don't even know what name to describe the system of government that we claim to be practicing in Nigeria. But what I can tell you authoritatively is that what we have in Nigeria is not a federal system of government. And so the call for restructuring is a call for what Nigerians will call true federalism. Though within the dictionary of political science, there's nothing like true federalism. But Nigeria is not practicing federalism in its real sense of federalism. And so in a true federal system, there's devolution of power. Each tiers and organs of government are autonomous. Each region control their resources and give, certain percentage of whatever comes out of these resources to the center. But in Nigeria, what you have is antithetical to the principles of federalism. The center in Nigeria is overpowerful, and that is why you see every day, you see governors relocating to Abuja as though Abuja is their state. There are governors in Nigeria who would not even spend up to 3 working days in their state. They are every time in Abuja because of the nature of the system of government that we claim to be practicing. And so the call for restructuring is long overdue. We need to restructure this country. We need to ensure that states are viable. Many states in Nigeria are not economically viable. Governors do not think outside the box. Every governor is just waiting for FEC to share money, and once they share money, they return back to their state, expend this money. States are not generating internal revenue as much as they ought to. There are states in Nigeria today that if you deny them of federal allocation, those states will go into comatose because of the kind of system of government that we practice. And so it means that there is a need for us to go back to the ideals and the real principles of federalism, where the component units are autonomous of the federal government, where the component unit control the resources that they have and remit certain percentage to the center, not the center taking total charge of resources. And that's why also, if you take a look at the list, the concurrent list, the legislative list, and the exclusive list, you will discover that a lot of things we have in the exclusive list is part of the reason why the federal government is overpowerful, the federal government is overloaded, and it accounts for the lack of good governance. It accounts for the state of underdevelopment and backwardness that we find ourselves in Nigeria. And so if we begin to restructure, if we have a system where politics is not politically and economically driven, you have a system where political positions are not as lucrative as they are. You have a system where political positions and political authority is a call for service. I am telling you, if you offer somebody the position of a minister or the position of a commissioner, they will decline, because they know that it will be a call for serious responsibility and assignment. But we have a state where people just come in and lavish our commonwealth because they do not work for this money. And that is because of the nature of governance, the system of governance that we have. And the solution is to restructure this country. Let's practice federalism as it ought to be.
All right, let's practice federalism as it ought to be. Back to you, Mr. Moshood. You have the statistics. Can you give it to us now?
Yeah, first of all, I listened to what my colleague said, insightful discussion there, and I quite agree with him. What I'm trying to say here is, first, unfortunately, majority of our states depend on this federal allocation, unfortunately. But again, there is a Lagos state that which only 22% of which FAC only contributes just 22% of entire state revenue for Lagos State. For Ogun State, FAC contributes 35%. For FCT, it contributes 49%. Every other state, FAC contributes over 50% of their revenue. Unfortunately, so like he said, many of these state governors are just waiting for end of the month, get FAC allocation and make money, expend those monies without accountability, unfortunately. But again, there are a lot of questions about even for instance, South states. This South state usually get what they call the 13% derivation. But unfortunately, there are still a lot of underdevelopment in those states. Are you restructuring and giving these states entire control of these resources and then leave them to this same set of leaders? What would then happen to these people that at the moment there's a lot of underdevelopment in those regions, despite they are getting this 13% derivation? And of course, there are a lot of scandals in this in those regions, in virtually every region. For instance, the recent NDDC scandal,
Yeah.
the off your mic scandal. Unfortunately, what's the situation? These are commissions, or these are agencies that are built to emancipate people, alleviate poverty. But unfortunately, despite that, this unfortunately, despite that, those in charge of these funds, unfortunately, are not doing the right thing. Are you now leaving this set of people to manage the resources in those states entirely? What will then happen to the people? The people will be left at the mercy of this same set of leaders that have really failed them over time. That's my major concern about restructuring this country, especially from the economic angle. There are different areas again where we can restructure. Why not restructure the entire country by building strong institutions, building strong leaders, building citizens that can actually demand accountability, that can
Some would
ask
say it would
the
be a
right questions.
Herculean tax, restructuring the whole nation at once. Why not take it one step at a time? Find one, do one, restructure one, and then move on to the other. But let's hear from Dr. Hamisu Abdurrahman. He is a public affairs analyst and a trained political scientist. Welcome, Dr. Hamisu. Okay. Well, before he gets back, Can you hear me, doctor? All right, let's move on to Dr. Adejo then. Dr. Adejo, you've heard him, Mr. Moshood, with all the statistics that he read out. Do you agree with him, or what is your stand on restructuring the whole nation at once, or taking it one step at a time?
Well, governance is a is about delivering the dividends of democracy. But of course, I also appreciate the principle of incrementalism and gradualism. It is difficult to come up with a holistic restructuring, and that's why you see most times our government do not achieve anything, because when they assume political positions, they put a lot of things in their hands. You want to achieve 1 million agenda and you end up not achieving any at all because of the volume of things you want to do. And so restructuring is a gradual thing. When we achieve political economic restructuring, every other thing will follow. It was Kwame Nkrumah that once said, "Seek ye first political kingdom, and every other thing shall be added unto you." But political kingdom without economic independence is useless. And so the first step to approach restructuring is to carry out a political restructuring, and that has to do with recalibrating our federal system to being in line with the true principles of federalism. Once we get that correctly, every other thing will begin to follow. And Mr. Moshood made a point of the level of decadence and bad governance in the Niger Delta, regardless of the derivation, the money they get, COSIP, the principle of derivation, regardless of the Ministry of Niger Delta, the NDDC that government has put in place to help, develop this area. Your points are very factual, but you see, Nigeria can only be governed by Nigerians. And so to change those crop of leadership is difficult, but when we have political restructuring, political positions will become competitive. Political positions will now be based on competence. I will not give, for instance, Moshood Commissioner for Finance if I do not know that Moshood has the capacity to help me generate revenue as a governor. But what you see today in Nigeria, political positions are based on political compensation. Because of the role you played in my election, I give you chief of staff. Because of how much money you contributed in my campaign, I give you commissioner of finance or commissioner for education. If we restructure this country politically, government will become like private sector where only the best can handle political position. And you see, why we are where we are today and why states like the Niger Delta are not developed regardless of the resources that they have, is because the state governors will always push their attention to the center. There's underdevelopment in your state, you are blaming the federal government. There is bad road in your state, you are blaming Buhari. There is unemployment in your state, you are blaming Buhari. But when you have restructuring and the citizens know that you are in total control of the resources of your state, the citizens or indigenes can now hold their governors accountable, because you know that the governor is in charge of your resources. But the situation where the resources goes to the center, the governors use that to, sway the attention of people as though the federal government is not performing. But it's not all about the federal government. State governments have a lot of role to play. Local governments have a lot of role to play.
So, doctor, do you think the states
the only way we can hold
for restructuring to take the bull by the horn and do this themselves?
The Nigerian state as a whole is not ready for restructuring. The Nigerian state is not ready for restructuring because we have state governors and political appointees who are very lazy, who are highly incompetent, who do not have the intellectual and administrative acumen to manage the affairs of the state. And so once you begin to practice restructuring, their secret will be exposed. And so state governors, over 85% of the Nigerian states are not ready, and they will not be willing to embrace restructuring because they will know that governance is no longer business as usual. They don't want that. They just want to sleep at the end of the month, come to Abuja, collect your share, and go and spend it. I'm from Kogi State, one of the most underdeveloped states in Nigeria. but yet one of the most strategic states in Nigeria,
How do you mean?
a state where you cannot leave northern Nigeria to southern Nigeria without passing through.
Oh,
You
sure.
cannot leave northern Nigeria to eastern Nigeria without passing through Kogi State. You cannot leave northern Nigeria without passing through Kogi State to go to the south-south. Kogi State has a lot of mineral resources strategically located, but the ineptitude of political leadership has kept the state in a state of underdevelopment. If you practice a federal system, government of Kogi State will see how to turn around the resources that God has blessed Kogi State with. Government of Nasarawa State is one of the most blessed states in Nigeria, but I tell you, apart from agriculture, there is nothing happening in Nasarawa State because of the system of government that we put in place. State government will not be ready, but we need to take the bull by the horn. States that are not ready, we can collapse them. States that are not viable can be collapsed into other states, and things will begin to take shape.
Is that
Not
really
what we have.
At this time, to collapse states into other states? But you've mentioned governors and states. One governor who has really spoken on this issue is the Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai. He's of the view that National Assembly are representatives of the people and should be the ones to do the restructuring. What's your perspective on this? Okay, we have now Dr. Abdulrahman. He's back now. Can you hear me, Doctor? Good to have you join us again, Dr. Abdulrahman. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so we've spoken at length about restructuring, whether the Nigerian states are ready. Well, Dr. Adejo says Nigerian states are not ready. True federalism needs to be practiced. What is your view? What is your perspective on restructuring the Nigerian states? And what Dr. Governor El-Rufai said about the National Assembly being the representative of the people and who should be the ones doing the restructuring for Nigeria. What's your perspective, Doctor?
Well, thank you so very much. I think we've had a lot of restructuring in this country. A lot of issues have been raised concerning restructuring. The question we've not answered are the following. What do we mean by restructuring? At what level do we desire restructuring?
Mm-hmm.
What are the structures that needed to be restructured? Is it the structure of the federation that needs restructuring, or it is the mind of the people that needed to be restructured? Fundamentally, we thought that our problem in this country is the structure of the entity called Nigeria. So we moved from 3 regions to 4. From there, the civil war erupted, and then we moved to 12 states. From 12 states to 21 to 27. Now we have 36, including the FC. Local government, the same thing. We kept on balkanizing this nation in the name of bringing government closer to the people. The question is government closer to the people today compared to before? It is agreed that as at the time we had the regions, Nigeria developed faster. Even now that we have about 36 states in the federation and 774 local governments. Now, for instance, if you take China, how many local government does China have? How many states does China have? The most important thing is governance. Governance is what is critical to the survival of everybody, because without governance, there will be no security. Without governance, there will be no service delivery. Without governance, there will be no semblance of order and orderliness. So today, we have 774 local government that ought to have brought government or governance closer to the people. What do we have in our rural areas? Poverty. How well our state governed? Is it the issue of structure, or is the issue of institutions or the human content? So, for instance, when we have the regions, you have the entire Benue, Taraba, the present day Benue state, Taraba, as the Wakari province. And at that time, governance was effective. Today, You go to Taraba and Benue, despite the number of local governments we have and the wards, and then we have 2 states there, we're talking about insecurity. So is that the problem of the structures? And if you say restructuring, what do we mean by restructuring? So we need to be clear in terms of what we mean by restructuring. So we cannot just be banding around words because some people feel that there is imbalance. What is imbalance? Now, as Erufai said, the Senate is there. The Senate is made up of three members per state. And then you have.
So what is their role at this point in making sure that the Nigerian state is restructured according to the Kaduna State government?
Yes. So if we're talking about restructuring, I don't know, but I need to be enlightened. I need to be enlightened. But for me, if you ask my opinion, it's good governance. It's not about the structure. Now, since we went to democracy in 1999, almost all the major ethnic groups have been governing themselves. If you go to the north, right, the north is made up of distinct ethnic groups. You go to Benue State, the thieves have been ruling Benue State ever since we returned to democratic governance. If you go to Kano State, it has been the Hausas that are governing Kano State. You go to Adamawa, for instance, you have the Fulanis as well as other tribes, the major tribes. You go to South. Now, the governor is the chief security officer of the state. You go to the local government. The major ethnic groups in the local government are those that are governing. Now, the question has been, what is the impact of government and governance on the life of the people? So if you're talking about restructuring, for instance, in Niger State, there is a rotation between the 3 zones, and the 3 zones are producing governors. And there is no improvement in terms of the lives of the people. You go
so
to
for a state like that, for a state like Niger, what do you think the need? Restructuring or not? Or good governance, like you said?
It's good governance. It's not the structure.
Don't
There's
you
nothing
think
wrong with the structure.
Restructuring plays in governance, that they are intertwined?
So what restructuring are we talking about in Niger State? That we should balkanize the state further to create more local governments? If these existing local governments are not effective, if the existing local governments are not adding value to the lives of the people, if the resources of the people are being stolen by those that are supposed to use it for the benefit of the people, and you said it's restructuring, is it restructuring or the issue of bad governance, people that are using our problems to steal our money? For instance, since 1999, we talked about inadequate power supply. What happened? IPP came on board, and then $16 billion was taken out of the system. Is it the structure of the nation that took 16 billion out of the nation, or it is the people that are governing the nation? What about the Siemens scandal? What about the arms scandal?
Dr. Adika mentioned something earlier about some states who are not really doing well. The states are, according to him, considered not viable to stand on their own, collapse into other states. What is your take on this? Will it play a huge part in improving those states?
Yeah, there are states that are considered not viable. It's not because they are not viable. It's because those that are governing those states are not thinking. They only wait for allocation from the federal government, and after that, they are done. So they are not thinking. If you ask me, no state is not viable, provided there is land in those states, arable lands that are fertile. It's just because we are not thinking. And what we do is you assume the role of the governor, and then every second week of the month, you send your accountant general to Abuja to go and reconcile account in terms of what will be given to your state. And after that, you don't think about any means of earning income. Those challenges are there.
Okay.
Those states.
Okay, let's hear. Thank you so much, Dr. Abdurrahman. Let's now hear from Mr. Moshood, who has been waiting patiently to speak his mind. What is your take about the opponents of restructuring pointing out that taking power away from the center could lead to uneven development at some states? Some states will develop more than the other. Do you think these fears are valid?
Can you hear me?
Okay, yes. Go ahead now.
Come on. Yeah, so like I said, even at the moment, some states are more developed than the others, and probably it's because they have better leaders in those states. Like I gave example, only FACT contributes just 22% of Lagos state revenue, but in states like Ondo, FACT contributes 65% of Ondo state revenue. These are this for this is the despite this, it's even considered as is among the 10 least FACT dependent states despite being despite contributing 65%. Not even thinking of then what would you now say about other states, for instance? So, like he said, I agree with the fact that it's not because of lack of being economically viable, but because they don't have right thinking leaders. There will always be a lot of avenues. First of all, like he said, agriculture. First of all, there are other areas where we can generate revenue, internally generated revenue. There are a lot of tax nets that are not being explored really. If you build infrastructure more in your state, there is opportunity to explore this tax net. So, like I agree with him, it's about good governance first. Good governance, building the right institution that can enable, that can ask the right questions. For instance, we have anti-corruption agencies right
Okay,
now.
Mr. Moshood.
Are they doing the right thing? Are they asking the right questions? Are they selecting who they will probe or not? Do these governors, there's this question about immunity too, these governors having immunity. There's a lot of argument about governors having immunity. Should they actually have immunity at this point in time? Meaning you can't they are not necessarily accountable to anyone because they have immunity. You cannot probe them. So these are some loopholes you can actually try to breach in order
Okay.
to build a strong institution and have better governance.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Moshood. Dr. Adija, are you still with us? Hello, Doctor. Dr. Adija. Okay, since Dr. I can hear him, I can barely hear him, but let's move to Dr. Abdurrahman. Dr. Adija, you're muted, so if you can unmute yourself and speak, that will be fine.
I can hear you now. I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Some people are saying if you restructure some of the states or Nigeria, that that it could lead to the disintegration of Nigeria. Do you think restructuring would lead to the disintegration of Nigeria?
I didn't really get your question.
Yes, I said some. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so Nigerians of the view that restructuring, as proposed by its proponents, could lead to the disintegration of Nigeria. So, what do you think about this opinion of some Nigerians? Do you think restructuring will actually disintegrate Nigeria?
I do not see any nexus between restructuring and the disintegration of Nigeria. And it still goes back to the earlier argument on what people really see or think restructuring is all about. When there's a country, I do not see how
Okay.
particular ethnic extraction is being marginalized by another, and so once you're able to restructure the country, marginalization would disappear. My brother Abdurrahman talked about Benue State, for instance. In Benue State, you cannot become governor of Benue State if you are not a thief man. Since the return of democracy in 1999, every governor in Benue State has always been a thief person. And so in Kogi State, until Yahaya Bello, there's no governor in Kogi State that was not an Igala man. And so the challenge we have is not just about political restructuring. We need behavioral change. Abdurrahman was saying something about the idea of having 774 local governments, yet all these local governments are underdeveloped. It is because of the political behavior of a typical Nigerian. There's a need for behavioral restructuring, and there's a need for institutional restructuring. And I do not see how, if you restructure political institutions, how that will bring about disintegration or secession. I do not see any connection with that. But for me, once we're able to achieve institutional restructuring, it gives us an opportunity for us to hold our leadership accountable, especially at the state level. State governors, local government chairmen can now be held responsible for their failure to deliver the dividends of governance to their people. And that's what we are talking about, not a situation where everybody relies on the federal government to come and take their allocation. We are saying that we must demonetize politics. We must reduce the excessive burden that the federal government is carrying. The exclusive list need to be reworked upon, where we have a situation where state governors or state governments can generate revenue and give certain percentage to the center, not the center giving to state governors. When we have such situation, every state governor can be held accountable. Every local government chairman can be held accountable. And even our senators will be able to now speak. Nigeria is so structured that even senators cannot speak to power because of the nature of the political structure that we have. Just recently, we are talking about whether president should be impeached or not. You could see the pandemonium in the Senate. Whether the president should be invited or not, you could see the pandemonium because of the excessive power that the president has. Look at
you've spoken a lot about the
United States of America.
A governor can tell it. Okay, thank you, Dr. Adejo. You've made some crucial points there. But Dr. Abdulrahman Hamisu, you're still with us, right? Okay, so I throw this at you. What do you think about what he has said so far? Political restructuring is needed, and then reducing the burden on the federal government. If this burden is taken to some states, do you think the states in Nigeria can even thrive with more responsibility given to them via restructuring?
That is the question. That is the question. Now, this is how we're operating. Federal government gathers the money and distribute to the state, and the state governors and local government chairmen sit around the table and they steal the resources. And then you don't have what you want at the local level. The state governors are emperors. You dare not question them. You cannot even oppose them. A few young persons that try to really ask questions about how their state governors are spending their money ended up being
Okay, I don't know what happened there, but we lost connection with Dr. Abdulrahman. I bring in the others, Dr. Adejo and Moshood. Mr. Moshood, when is ready? When is the time?
And then if that is the case, that our governors are not tolerant.
Okay. Mr. Moshood.
Yeah, I'm here with you.
Okay. So tell us, what time is the best time for this restructuring to happen? Do you think Nigeria is right for this restructuring, and when should it happen?
So I'm glad that my able doctors made valid points, important points, and one of which I held was behavioral change. A lot of times we elect our leaders based on emotions or other attachments rather than capacity, character, or competence. By the time we decide to have that behavioral change, know that elect leaders based on their competence and their character, and we are sure that this leader we are electing, we can entrust the entire resources of our state in his hands without fear, really. That's when we could start thinking of restructuring our state. Especially, I noticed Dr. Adejo dwelled more on economic restructuring, meaning states should generate their revenue more and then remit to the federal government. But then you have for you to give that power to that state governor, you have to trust that state governor. You have to because in recent times we have state governors or people in position of authority betraying the trust of the people. It is at that stage where we're able to trust our elected representatives, where we are able to elect leaders based on competence, based on character, based on capacity, rather than favor, rather than this vote buying we've seen over time, rather than any other sentimental attachment. Then we can trust those we are electing into power. Then we can start thinking of deciding, can we trust this person with the entire resources? And this has to happen across board. If say people of Kaduna State, for instance, or people of Lagos or another state actually trust their state governor, do people of, let's say, maybe another state in Niger Delta or any other region, do they trust their elected representative to actually be in charge of their entire revenue to be able to take care of the people? Because, for instance, I've been to Bayelsa State via Port Harcourt. The road is an eyesore. And all in the name of we are waiting, this is a federal road, we are waiting for the federal government to do that. But the state generator has a lot of revenue to actually do that road. The road is an eyesore. That's just a microcosm of roads in those regions and many other regions in the country, unfortunately. All in the name of the fact that these governors are not thinking behind the box. And then
All
some of
right.
them
Thank you
are.
so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Bashir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would take that as your final words as we are rounding up right now. The time is against us. But let's hear from you, Dr. Hamisu. What are your final words? What's the takeout from here now, going forward for states? What should happen going forward in
You
states in
see,
terms of
you see, as far as I'm concerned, the issue of the structure of the country is immaterial. What is of importance to me is the way we run our country, our states, and our local. You cannot have governors that generate revenues and then they spend it anyhow they want, and equally the amount of corruption that is associated with revenue generation, revenue are remitted to the center. It means we are talking about the disintegration of Nigeria across, give people the impetus to earn a living, reforms that put more resources into services to the people. By the time we do all of this, the question of who is government, because what is state 12? It is about the character of the elites that are governing this country.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Doctor, for your time and doing this with us. For you, Dr. Adejo, what are your last words before we go? What is the states expected to do, or what should go on in states going forward in terms of restructuring?
Well, governors must begin to think outside the box. Local government chairmen must begin to think outside the box and look for ways to ensure that they are not just camouflage leaders. People must feel the essence of governance, and the essence of governance is to deliver the dividends of democracy to the people, deliver security, ensure that we have, basic amenities and all of that. But all those things we do not have because of the nature of the political leadership. There's a need for a political reorientation. There's a need to change our political behavior and our political culture, where governance is seen as a platform for service delivery and not a platform for selfish and personal aggrandizement.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Adejo. We looked at the renewed call for restructuring of the Nigerian Federation. Are states ready? I hope we've been able to answer your questions with the awesome guests we've heard. Join us online, Dr. Abdulrahman Hamisu, who is a public affairs analyst and a trained political scientist. Thank you for doing this with us.
It's my pleasure.
Yes, and we also had Dr. Adejo Sunday, who is a lecturer and a political analyst. Thank you, Dr. Moshood Issa from Younger Africa is a communication officer. Thank you, Mr. Moshood, for doing this with us. I hope next time you will be able to grant us this audience.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for
Have a fantastic day, gentlemen. And for you watching, thank you for staying with us and doing this with us, listening to us as we contribute to the betterment of Nigeria. I hope we share this video and comment at the comment section what you think about Nigerian states, whether Nigeria actually needs restructuring at this time. My name is Sylvia Ishebe. I'll be back tomorrow for another interesting edition of Youth Assembly. Ihioma Ukeje put this together, and Click Niger is on www.clickniger.net, where you can listen to us 24 hours every day of the week. Bye for now. Have a fantastic day.